Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we slice through the noise and get straight to the knowledge hidden in the source material you send us.
Yeah, think of us as your guides, helping you absorb the most important insights quickly.
And today, thanks to the information you've shared, we're tackling a topic that's incredibly significant, but it often goes unnoticed.
It really does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're diving into supporting male survivors of sexual abuse. It's heavy, yes, but absolutely essential to understand. And the source material you sent, Cutting the Silence, Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse, it gives us a really focused look at this critical area.
So this deep dive, it's all about pulling the core insights from these pages. Like, what can we learn quickly and clearly about the specific challenges men face?
And why having access to, tailored support is so vital.
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's unpack this. The material, it wastes no time highlighting a really striking imbalance. It talks about how much of our cultural conversation and the support systems, they've historically focused on female survivors, which is, again, incredibly necessary work.
But this focus has often left male survivors feeling, well, the source puts it so powerfully, unnoticed, unvoiced, and unsupported.
That phrase alone, it just paints such a vivid picture.
And what's truly eye-opening is how the source then immediately backs that up. That feeling of being unseen, it connects it to a statistic that reveals the immense scale of the issue.
Which is?
It states that about 1 in 6 men will experience some form of sexual violence in their lifetime.
Wow, 1 in 6?
1 in 6. That number is much higher than I think many people realize.
Definitely.
And it underscores how this isn't some fringe issue. It's a widespread reality. Often goes acknowledged, in public discourse or even in support systems.
Wow, 1 in 6. Hearing that statistic right next to the description of feeling unnoticed, it creates this really powerful dissonance, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It highlights how deep the silence runs. And this silence, this lack of recognition and support, it allows trauma to fester. The source uses really evocative language here.
Like what?
It describes the impact of unprocessed trauma for survivors, saying it can have dramatic echoes throughout a person's life. It impacts all facets of life. It even includes this really stark image that the talons of trauma dig deep.
Oof, that phrase. It captures just how profoundly this kind of experience can wound someone, right? Affecting everything, relationships, work, mental health.
Everything, exactly.
So the need for help is clearly massive. And the impact of not getting that help is devastating.
Right.
And the source then zeroes in on a specific organization doing this crucial work, the one mentioned in the text, the BC Society for Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse. BCSMSSA.
Yeah, it's presented as a key example of the kind of specialized support that's needed, to address this particular form of trauma and silence.
And according to the source, what makes BCSMSSA particularly significant is its unique position.
How so?
It's highlighted as one of the only therapy clinics operating in Canada that exists to serve male-identifying survivors of sexual or domestic violence.
Wow. Think about that. One of the only.
Yeah.
In a country as large as Canada, especially with that 1 in 6 statistic we just talked about, having so few dedicated resources really underscores how rare this specific type of support is.
And how vital.
Totally vital.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't some new organization jumping in.
Oh.
The source points out their history. They're actually celebrating 35 years this year.
35 years. That's incredible.
It makes them the longest-standing men's sexual trauma center in the country. 35 years of dedicated, specialized work in a field that's been, largely ignored for decades.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it, about their commitment and the persistent unmet need they're addressing.
Absolutely.
And that long history in such a challenging area, it really emphasizes their foundational role. The source describes the experience of being a male survivor as inherently isolating and insulating.
Yeah, and it highlights how agencies like BCSMSSA directly counteract this profound isolation. They provide something crucial, a dedicated space that genuinely understands the unique struggles of men.
So it's not just therapy, it's therapy in an environment built for them.
Exactly. Built to acknowledge and validate their specific experiences.
And they're clearly reaching a significant number of people who need this specialized understanding. The source gives some numbers for 2024.
Okay.
They served hundreds of clients and had over 2,000 booked sessions.
Over 2,000? Wow.
Yeah, and the material translates those sessions into 2,000 hours of witnessing and processing.
2,000 hours? That's a lot of dedicated time.
It really is, face-to-face or virtually. where men who've often carried immense trauma in silence for years, maybe decades, finally have a safe space to be seen, heard, and to, begin healing. Those numbers give you a concrete sense of the scale of help being provided and the depth of the work involved. Absolutely. So, moving into what they actually do in those hours, the source details their specific services.
Right.
Foundational to their work is direct therapy for trauma. And this isn't just talking, right? It's often trauma-informed therapy, specifically designed to help survivors process those deep-seated impacts we talked about, those talons of trauma.
Okay, so specialized therapy is key. What else does the source mention? What other kinds of support?
They also offer essential logistical support. The source describes this as helping clients navigate systems, access funding, manage disclosures.
Logistical support, like practical stuff.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're dealing with the profound effects of trauma, just navigating bureaucracy or finding resources can feel overwhelming. Impossible sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So logistical support means practical help. Maybe assisting with filling out forms for financial aid, connecting them with legal resources if they choose that path, or guiding them through the complex process of reporting or disclosing.
It's about removing those practical barriers to healing.
Precisely.
That logistical piece sounds incredibly valuable. It's easy to forget those hurdles. What about group settings? Does it mention that?
Yes, crucially. The source highlights their facilitation of processing groups for men who endured childhood sexual violence.
Okay, processing groups, not
Yeah.
just support groups.
Right. The term processing suggests it's more structured. It involves guided work to actively understand and integrate the traumatic memories and their emotional impact. And doing this within a safe, shared environment, given how isolating and insulating the source says this experience is, connecting with other men who deeply understand that specific type of trauma must be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it breaks down that feeling of being utterly alone.
Totally.
So it's a mix. Individual therapy, practical help, and group support, all specifically tailored. And beyond direct services, the source mentions BCSMSSA also plays a significant educational role.
Educational? How so?
They facilitate workshops for other professionals, clinicians who might encounter male survivors, police, first responders, even indigenous communities.
Okay, and this raises an important question. Why this educational outreach? What's the gap they're filling?
Well, the source makes it very clear. Male sexual abuse is seldom discussed in contemporary discourse.
Right. Still so much silence around it.
Exactly. Which means many professionals just aren't equipped. They might not recognize the signs or understand the unique ways trauma presents in men or know how to provide the right kind of support.
So BCSMSSA isn't just treating survivors directly.
No, they're actively working to build capacity in the broader system, making sure more people in positions of help can actually provide effective help.
They're filling an educational gap that exists because the topic itself is so often silenced.
That makes perfect sense. You can't help if you don't understand the problem or recognize it.
Of course, doing this kind of vital, specialized work, especially for a population that's been historically underserved, it must come with significant challenges.
For sure. The source includes insights from the executive director, Mason Schell. He underscores that working with male sexual or domestic trauma is inherently difficult work. And this is particularly true for a small nonprofit with limited funds and support.
I bet. The source is also specific about the resources needed to do this work ethically and effectively, right?
Yeah, it mentions needing highly specialized professionals, trained masters or doctoral level clinicians for the complex therapy.
Right, for processing that deep trauma.
And also trained victim service workers for that essential, nuanced logistical support we discussed.
These aren't roles you can just fill easily. They require specific expertise, specific training.
Which requires significant investment.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the operational reality. How does an agency like this keep its doors open?
How does the funding work, according to the source?
It explains they rely on a mix, annual grant funding, which can be precarious, year to year.
Right. Grants aren't always guaranteed.
Then clients pledging what they can for sessions, which acknowledges the financial barriers survivors might face.
That's important. Accessibility.
And crucial donations from people in the community. This funding model really highlights the constant effort required just to maintain services.
And how essential community support is to their survival and their ability to serve.
Definitely.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source makes a powerful case for the ripple effect of supporting this work.
How so?
It emphasizes that a donation, or any form of support, It isn't just helping the individual survivor reach out. The positive impact extends outwards to his family and his community. It uses this incredibly evocative phrase that ties back to that initial point about being unseen.
This phrase.
It could be a brother, a father, an uncle, a son unseen.
Wow. It personalizes that 1 in 6 statistic. Connects it right back to the human cost of the silence.
Shifts it from an abstract problem to someone's loved one who might be suffering, totally isolated.
Yeah.
And amidst discussing the weight of the trauma and all the challenges, the source also offers a direct, powerful message of hope, specifically for survivors.
Okay, what's the message?
It states unequivocally, you are not alone.
That's powerful in itself.
It is, and it acknowledges the incredible capacity of the body and mind to cope and adapt even after profound hardship. And it highlights that avenues are available, like the services BCSMSSA provides, to help men work through the trauma and begin to emerge from its long shadow.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener, who generously shared this material with us? I mean, understanding this topic matters profoundly, right?
Absolutely. It shines a necessary light on an issue that affects a huge number of men, but it's just so rarely discussed. It helps break down some of that initial unnoticed, unvoiced barrier we started with.
It highlights the absolute necessity and the rarity of specialized services like BCSMSSA that truly understand the unique journey of male survivors.
And maybe most importantly, it underscores the power of just acknowledging this issue to counter that deep isolation the source described.
Yeah.
So to synthesize the value of an organization like BCSMSSA, using the source's description directly, it serves as a critical hub of therapeutic, logistical, and educational support.
A hub for countless men who, without access to that kind of understanding and specialized care,
Would likely continue to suffer in silence.
This has been a really impactful deep dive. Thank you again for providing the source material that allowed us to explore this crucial, often overlooked topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly.
So as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, here's maybe a final thought to consider, building on the material. The source tells us that trauma's talons dig deep, right? And it highlights the profound lack of widespread, visible support for male survivors. Given that context, what does the societal discomfort, or maybe the failure to adequately resource support for men who experience sexual violence, what does that tell us about our broader, often rigid definitions of strength and vulnerability for men in our society?
That is definitely something to sit with. We hope you're feeling inspired. Be sure to follow Global Heroes, sign up for the newsletter, and watch It's a Beautiful World streaming now on Prime Video.